Let me tell you, I never thought my first real standoff in Stillwater, Minnesota would start with a knock that shook the glass out of my front door, like the person on the other side was already convinced they owned a piece of me. You know, Saturday mornings were supposed to be quiet here. At least that's what I told myself when I bought this house on Lake McCusick. Just coffee, sunlight on the water, maybe a little coating to pay the bills. But as I crossed the hardwood with my mug, that pounding didn't just rattle the glass, it rattled my plans for peace. And when I opened the door, oh, it got interesting. There she stood, tall, all business short, blonde hair, trimmed, sharp jacket, pinned with a shiny little badge. "Mr. Whitlow," she snapped, not even waiting for me to ask. "I'm Joanne Prentice, president of the Lakeshore Association. We need a copy of your back gate key today." Just like that, no greeting, no pretense, just marching up and demanding the one thing that made this place feel like home. She explained the gate at the back of my yard, the one leading right to the lake, should be open for board members, for any resident who needs quicker access. Called it only fair. I could barely believe it, coffee cooling in my hand, staring at her like maybe if I blinked she'd vanish. With all respect, I told her slow and steady because my mom always taught me, you don't show your cards to a bully. That gate is private. It's not community property. It's part of my yard. But Joanne, arms, folded lips, twisting into a smirk, just shot back. That's the shortest route to the lake. You can't just keep it locked up because you feel like it. The community expects cooperation. That word cooperation. It's funny how some folks use it like a club instead of an invitation. I didn't move here for drama, but I also didn't move here to be trampled. I bought this home for privacy, I said, and that gate isn't part of your jurisdiction. She just stared, smile thinning, and said, "You really want to be the neighbor who refuses to share? That's the reputation you'll start with here." Then she spun around heels, hitting the concrete in sharp little snaps, each one saying, "This isn't over." I leaned back against the door and let out a breath. My mama's voice echoed in my head. "Stand firm on what's yours, or people will decide for you." Didn't think I'd be tested on that lesson so soon. Later, while I was out trimming hedges, I saw neighbors walking past, giving polite little smiles, glancing sideways at my gate. It didn't take a genius to figure word was spreading. That night, sitting on the deck with a cold beer, I replayed that knock, that smirk, that whole absurd conversation. Didn't feel like the end. More like the beginning of a story I never asked to be part of. And right on cue, a week later, Joanne came back, but this time she wasn't alone. Let me back up a sec, though, because you gotta know why that gate mattered to me. After 2 decades bouncing around from San Francisco to Dallas to Phoenix, always chasing the next job, next gig, next contract, I'd finally hit a point where I wanted quiet. Not the absence of sound, but the kind of peace you can feel in your bones. This place. The moment I stepped onto the back patio, felt the breeze off the lake, and closed my hand around that iron gate I knew. "This is mine," I whispered. Ownership, peace breathing room. That's what I paid for. But the Lakeshore Association had rules for everything. Grass length, mailbox, color where your trash can sits. The handbook felt like a warning, but I told myself I could deal. I wasn't the fighting type, at least that's what I thought. My first week, neighbors drifted by with banana bread and cautious smiles. Ronald and Beverly, retired, chatted about fishing. A young couple, Eli and Sandra, warned me, "The HOA is strict, but not so bad if you play along." I laughed. I'm not worried. Famous last words, right? Nobody mentioned Joanne Prentice, the new HOA president, who'd been elected on promises of unity and, of course, easier lake access. For Joanne, it wasn't about community. It was about control. My gate, my peace was the obstacle, and suddenly I heard my name floating in neighbors' conversations, whispers about the new guy, the gate, and then awkward silence when I'd step outside. The real punchline, if someone had just asked to use the lake, I probably would have said yes. But being told demanded to hand over my key. That was a line in the sand. A couple days later, I bumped into Ronald at the cafe downtown. He leaned in, voice low. "Word of advice, son. Don't get on Joanne's bad side. Folks here don't like waves." I smiled. I didn't move here to make waves, but I didn't move here to get pushed around either. He just patted my shoulder like he already knew how this story ended. The next evening, I walked down to that gate, hand on the lock, repeating my promise, this is mine. But I could feel it. Someone else was already plotting how to take it away. So when Joanne came back, she brought a folder and a tighter smile. The HOA bylaws give us authority to manage access to shared amenities. Your gate qualifies, she claimed, holding up paperwork like it was gospel. I told her, that gate's on my property survey. It's mine. She leaned in, voice lowering. You're new. You don't understand how things work. If everyone locked up paths, there'd be chaos. The board expects you to contribute, not create barriers. I expect my property rights to be respected. I shot back. You can look at the survey yourself. She glared. Are you really going to make this about technicalities? I laughed. Property law isn't a technicality. Behind her, a neighbor pretended to check his phone, clearly listening. Word was spreading and Joanne knew it. You'll regret making this harder than it has to be, she said, turning on her heel. That night I pulled out the HOA handbook, hunting for any mention of my gate. Nothing. The lake. Sure. My private entrance. Not a word. I wondered how many other homeowners had caved just because the board expects it. 2 days later, I caught Joanne, Sandra, and Victor, another board member, talking across the street, their voices low, eyes darting my way. The tension was getting thick. That evening, my phone buzzed. Joanna, brisk and businesslike. This is your formal notice. The board will be reviewing your refusal. If you continue to resist, fines may be imposed. I couldn't help but laugh. Fines for what? For refusing to give you something you don't own? Go ahead. I'll see you in court. There was a pause, then a huff. You're not being neighborly. People talk. Click. You ever feel the air getting squeezed out of a place you thought was your sanctuary? That was me staring at the lake through my window, wondering how many neighbors were now on her side, just because they were scared to be on mine. Next Saturday, I'm halfway through grilling chicken when the bell rings again. Joanne with Victor this time and a clipboard. We wanted to give you another opportunity to resolve this matter without friction, she said. Victor piped up. Cooperation is the backbone of community. Don't your neighbors deserve easier access to the lake? I replied. So you want my key for convenience. That's not how property rights work. Joanne smiled. It's about harmony. Everyone else has agreed when adjustments were needed. I crossed my arms. Maybe I'm the only one who sees what you're doing. This isn't harmony. It's control. Victor pressed, the board can enforce penalties if you refuse. I shot back. Show me where it says that in the bylaws. I've read them. You don't have that power. That standoff didn't end with anyone shaking hands. After that, the neighborhood grew colder. Fewer waves. Kids stopped playing near my yard. Even Ronald and Beverly, who used to chat, barely nodded anymore. The shift was subtle, but it was real. The air got tight, the message clear. Joanna was pulling strings and people were choosing sides. I called my sister that night, told her everything. So this woman thinks she's sheriff of Lake McCusick, she said. I laughed pretty much. She just told me what Mom always said, don't let them decide for you. Next weekend, Joanna came back again, this time with Victor and another stranger. Calvin, the HOA secretary. Clipboard notebook, all the trappings of an official ambush. Please state for the record, Calvin said that you've refused to provide a copy of your gate key. I burst out laughing. You think scribbling in a notebook makes this official? That gate is mine. Victor tried the let's be reasonable speech, but by then I'd had it. This isn't reasonable, I said, it's harassment. Joanna snapped. We are the governing body. If you won't work with us, we will impose penalties. I stared them down. Show me where in the bylaws it says you can take my property rights. She leaned in, voice low. You'll regret this. Everyone already sees you as the outsider. I didn't flinch. I didn't buy this house to belong to you. They turned the whole block, watching from behind curtains. That night I started Googling HOA harassment, legal rights, Minnesota. Story after story of people bullied, fined, silenced. I realized if I didn't push back, nobody would. So I called the Stillwater Police Department, reported the harassment. The dispatcher said they'd send someone if it escalated. A week later, Joanne showed up with Victor Calvin and Elaine, another board member. She announced, "This is your final warning. If you don't hand over the key, daily fines start now. We'll notify your mortgage lender." I laughed. "You think you can threaten my mortgage over a gate you don't own?" Elaine jumped in. "Trust me, it never ends well for the homeowner." But I told them. "Funny. You say that I spoke to the police already. They told me to call if this continued." That wiped the smirk off Joanna's face. When I started dialing, they backed off. Minutes later, police showed up, 2 officers, calm but firm. Joanna tried her pitch, but Officer Winton said, "Unless the gate is listed as a shared amenity, you have no authority." Joanna's cheeks flushed. "We're acting in the community's best interest." Officer Martinez cut in. "Harmony isn't the law. Property lines are. If this continues, it could be considered harassment." The neighbors, Sandra, Ronald, even the kids gathered to watch the spectacle. "We're siding with the law," the officer said, "not with the board." For the first time, I felt the knot in my chest loosen. The next day, the whole cul-de-sac buzzed with talk. Some said the cops threatened to arrest Joanna. Others whispered that the fines were illegal. It didn't matter, the damage to her image was done. Sandra crossed the street one evening quietly, saying, "Good for you. Nobody's ever stood up to Joanna." Ronald, on his walk, admitted, "You might have given others courage." But Joanna doubled down, taped a letter to my door announcing $100 daily fines as if the police never happened. My sister said, "Get a lawyer. Don't let her bully you." So I went to the next HOA meeting. As soon as Joanna tried to drag my name through the mud, I called her out loud enough for everyone to hear. Neighbors started to speak up, Sandra, Ronald, even Elaine, saying he's right. It's not about access anymore, it's about control. The tide turned and whispers of a recall spread. 2 weeks later, they held a vote. Joanna resigned before the results were tallied. Her grip on the neighborhood broken, not just by me, but by every neighbor who finally saw that boundaries matter. Now when I walk my dog, the air feels lighter. Kids play near my driveway. Sandra waves. Even Ronald jokes, "You rattled her cage, son." And as I stand by my gate watching the sunset over Lake McCoosic, I think about what it all means. Some battles find you whether you want them or not. Boundaries aren't just about land. They're about dignity, about refusing to let anyone else define your limits. So let me ask you, what would you have done in my shoes? Would you have given in for the sake of peace or stood your ground when everyone else went silent? Drop a comment below, share your stories about HOAs or standing up for yourself. Because trust me, sometimes the most ordinary places hide the most extraordinary lessons, and your voice matters here just as much as mine.